At the top of the list for you and I think, is number 4, Michigan at Iowa. That is the big noon game on tap for the week. Start with this. This is a rematch of the Big Ten championship game for which you and I were at Lucas Oil Stadium to see that live and in color. Michigan made light work of Iowa 42-3. How do you think this was going to go, Geoff?
Well, I don't think it'll be that big of a spread, but I definitely think that Michigan has the advantage here of just being just a more well-rounded team, right? We saw Iowa put up some points last week against Rutgers, 27 to be exact, but they're just so reliant on being great on defense that it really concerns me that when you're playing a Michigan team that can do really everything well, that's not enough, right? And I get it. Iowa plays really well at home against ranked opponents. That's all true. But Michigan's not going to be worried about that. They played in big games before. As you mentioned, they played this game last season, even with a different quarterback. I get that. But to me, there's going to be just too much for Iowa to overcome here if Michigan plays the way they can play. They're just too well-rounded, RJ, and Iowa's not.
I hear you, but let me push back on this because I have been a big fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes since the preseason, and a lot of it has to do with the defense, and the defense has even exceeded my expectations. The defense has scored 16 points. The defense has allowed 23 points. That is a 66-year low through 4 games. I would also add Iowa has played a much more difficult schedule than Michigan.
Yes.
Most folks would point out, hey, RJ, Michigan is averaging 50 points a game. I said against UConn, Hawaii, and Colorado State. That is not exactly the toughest schedule in the world. So I'll give it back to you on this. If Iowa can do what I think they're going to do, which is prevent Blake Corum from running roughshod over them. Michigan's averaging 234 rush yards a game. Blake Corum put up 243 last week against Maryland. Then you got to put it on J.J. McCarthy to go beat that defense. Do you think the sophomore quarterback can go beat that Iowa defense?
That's the tough part, right, of this game is that we haven't seen him do it yet. And this is a really good defense who has forced a ton of turnovers over the year, right? And, we keep saying, and this is absolutely true, that turnovers are luck. They're being in the right place at the right time, but a lot of them end up being turnover luck. But for Iowa, this is their identity now. For 6 straight years, they have dominated taking the ball away from their opponent. And now you add in a quarterback who's young and inexperienced on the road in an environment that's tougher than he, to your point, has played so far this year. That could definitely be a concern. But I think, again, like RJ, if Iowa can't move the ball offensively, right, even if they force turnovers, it doesn't matter. Are they going to score 17 points in this game? 14 points. Michigan's going to eventually wear them down and score, which we saw happen in the conference championship game, right? They just wore them down, eventually, boom, bust out, a couple of those explosive plays. So that's my concern is that, McCarthy might struggle, but can Iowa do enough offensively to keep this game close at the end?
It's a very good point. Blake Corum wasn't really the dude that broke it open for them as much as Donovan Edwards did last year, and he's been hurt the last couple of weeks. If he can go this week, I think he gives them an added dimension, but I also think J.J. McCarthy is going to get them in as much trouble as he gets them out of, and against Iowa, I don't know that that's going to work. Now, last part about this is on the Iowa offensive side, for which we know it is anemic to say the least.
Yes.
But Spencer Petras and that offense have not turned the ball over in the last 2 games. How would you feel as a football coach if you knew that if the offense gets you 14 points, you're probably going to win the football game? How would that feel for you?
Oh, I mean, not great.
Not great.
The thing about it, the thing about it though is college football. It's easier to score. Like you have not a wider field than the NFL, but with the hash marks,
they're narrowed.
You end up getting a wider field, right? So like if you're in the left hash, from the left hash to the sideline, all the way to the right, the wide side is longer than the NFL, right? There's so much room and space. Like you should be able to generate plays because of the space. How many teams do we see generate space and generate explosive plays just from throwing the ball out to the wide receiver? And like Iowa doesn't try to be creative, and it just simply creative. Like let's just find a way to get our wide receiver one-on-one in space. They just don't do that enough. And so it's a tough spot to be in to like beg your offense to score 14 points in a game.
It is definitely an offense that is very much fine living in 1997. That's who they are. That's who they've been. They love a rock fight. They will tell you that Torrey Taylor, their punter, is one of the best players on the team, and they're saying that without any sarcasm at all. They genuinely believe that this is who they are. It's how they want to get down. And as a former wrestling captain, I can't tell you how excited I am to go to Iowa City because I grew up worshiping at the altar of one Dan Gable, and then down the road, you got a Cale Sanderson at Iowa State doing great things at Penn State. I could go on about the wrestling part of this for a very long time, but I want to move on to a much more modern feeling game, at least to me. And Oklahoma State at Baylor. That's number 9 Oklahoma State at number 16 Baylor. Another game that was a conference championship last year. This is Big 12. Look, Spencer Sanders in this game threw 4 interceptions, and the Cowboys still came up just 6 inches short of winning the Big 12 championship. They end up going to the Fiesta Bowl, and they beat Notre Dame, and they're riding high. I genuinely think that Spencer Sanders is going to throw Baylor the football again this year, but if it takes 4 interceptions, I don't know that that's a game that they're going to win again. How do you see this one playing out for Oklahoma State and Baylor?
Well, I think in a rematch like this, and the teams are still pretty close to what they were last year, obviously different personnel and certain, especially Oklahoma State doesn't have as many weapons as they had last season, at least not the guys that we know of. The advantage to me is on the Oklahoma State side, right? Because when you throw that many interceptions, you're able to look at that film and figure out why that happened, right? And obviously in Baylor, and I saw Dave Randa talk about this, he goes, last year's last year. And he's absolutely right. But you kind of are going to do what you did last year because it worked. And so the advantage Oklahoma State has here is knowing that. Now the question becomes obviously if they can take advantage of this, and if Saunders can take advantage of finding ways to attack Baylor's defense, and we'll find out as we go. But to me, Baylor, again, they're 32nd in the country in points per drive. Like, they're good on defense. But my question becomes their offense, dude. They're 106th in the country right now in explosive play rate on offense. They're just not moving the ball down the field in a way where even if they do force turnovers, can they make Oklahoma State pay for those turnovers? They haven't really shown the ability to do that so far this season.
I think that they can, but I also think that they're built to win using the defense in a much more modern way than, say, Iowa. The way that I look at this is last year, Baylor made the Big 12 championship, won the Big 12 championship, won a Sugar Bowl with a linebacker who became a running back who rushed for 1,600 yards. His name's Abram Smith, right? Yeah. This year, they went and got a dude from Bellevue, Texas. And Richard Reese was ranked number 710 as a recruit in the 2021 class, shows up there and is leading the team in rushing. Blake Shapen is not going to throw you the football. He's going to take care of it. I think with the defense that they're able to field, with the way that Dave Aranda has been able to employ that really outstanding 3-man defensive line, they're just fine doing that and sitting back and letting you make a mistake. The difference, I think, is when you have a team like BYU, for whom they lost to, a team that can absolutely challenge you vertically down the field and still run the ball on you, then you have some problems. I think you're going to just look at Spencer Sanders and say, where do your eyes take me? If you can trick me into thinking you're going somewhere else with the football, you're going to win. If you can't, we're going to take the ball from you and we're going to give it to Richard Reese and we're going to grind out the clock. Does that seem too far-fetched to you?
No, it certainly doesn't. Some other things to consider in this game too, as I kind of look at my notes here. Blake Shapen, Baylor's quarterback, and that's kind of why I think they tried to avoid using him as much as possible. He's been under pressure a bunch this year, 28% of his dropbacks, and he's only completed 40% of passes under pressure. And this is a big problem, in this game where, you mentioned Saunders' ball security. If Shapen has to get into a game where he becomes the offense, that becomes a problem for Baylor. I think they all have their warts. I feel like, to me, this is one of those where, like, who makes, and this is the same for every game, but like, just who can make less mistakes, who can stick to their game plan, not have issues with turnovers, and just kind of grind the other team out is the way they both want to win. Other thing too is that Baylor's really good at home. Like, they're really good at home, and those things matter, I think, in college football way more than almost any other sport. And they've won 9 straight games at home, and that kind of, as the crowd gets louder and things build up and things don't go well, it does kind of put a shock in your system if you're the away team. So we'll have to see how Oklahoma State handles, when things, they're going to go wrong at some point in this game.
I'm really interested on the point that you raise about what Shapen is going to be able to do or not do, because I think it's a great point about what it's been like for him to drop back. I also think that when you're looking at the Oklahoma State defense that has a new defensive coordinator that hasn't really been tested, that's where I think, kind of like Michigan and Iowa, you're going to see whether or not somebody has some battle scars that they can reflect on. in that Baylor went out and played a really good Brigham Young team, as far as I'm concerned. And Oklahoma State still ain't played nobody, Paul. Like, they're averaging 51.7 points per game and number one in scoring offense, but against who? Central Michigan's the best team you played outside of perhaps Arizona State, who fired their head coach a couple weeks ago, right? That's where we're at with that one. I think that the winner of that game, regardless, though, is going to be one of those two teams that plays in the Big 12 championship game. So this game definitely has those sort of implications, as a top 25 matchup should.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.